Welcome back everyone to another video on the Vixen Victory channel. Today we're going to be talking about Xianyun. Now it has been a little while since the last one, and we're finally over the sickness and we're finally over vacation, so now we can finally just get back right into talking about these. If you guys did or were a part of the stream yesterday that I did, I talked about we're going to be doing the Xianyun build guide today, obviously, and then we're going to be doing the Gaming build guide right after that. We've already gone over Shivers and Yansan, so let's go ahead and talk about Xianyun, then we'll talk about Gaming. Even if Gaming or the banner is over by the time I do the Gaming video, so it might not be tomorrow, it might be the day after, but either way I will get him done as well. So even if this banner is over, I will still be putting out a build guide for him, just because I really want to. And then besides that, we're also going to be doing the new banners and the new characters that drop with it as well, looking at build guides for Xianyun, Venti, and then the 4-stars that are going to appear on those banners. So without further ado though, let's go ahead and talk about Xianyun. Looking at Xianyun, obviously with her talents, usually obviously if you run the trial like normal, you're going to see triple 8 among all of these. In my personal opinion, you're not going to have to touch the normal attack at all. It's practically useless with her as a character. You can if you want to, obviously if you have the materials and you want to go ahead and use them, you can. But her biggest things you're going to want to level into is first and foremost her burst, and then her skill behind that. Now her skill isn't anything necessarily crazy besides some extra personal damage, whereas the burst on the other hand does have some damage, but mainly the biggest thing here is the healing. So really the burst is the only thing that really has to be upgraded. So if you really only want to focus into one thing, that's what you want to do. If you don't want to, if you kind of want to do more than one, you at least want to get 2 things up, I do recommend doing the skill because it is still a nice little bit of extra damage for the team overall with using her as a character. So overall, besides that though, let's go ahead and jump right into what the talents are actually going to do. So with her skill, she's going to go into the transmogrification state, which is going to allow you to use the sky ladder at least one time. In this state, her plunging attack will then be converted into the Drift Cloud Wave instead of her regular plunge attack, and then this will also deal AoE animo damage and end her transmogrification state. This is also considered plunging attack damage. It is not based on the skill itself. So if you are doing anything to increase skill damage, this is not going to help that. Increasing plunging damage, though, will help. Now, the scalings are still based off of the skill, so leveling into the skill is going to help. That's why you're still going to level into the skill, but it's not considered skill damage, so any outside skill buffs, like a 4-piece or 2-piece of the Golden Troop set that increase elemental skill damage is not going to be helping this because it is still considered plunging attack damage. Each use of Sky Ladder while in this state increases the damage and AoE of the next Drift Cloud wave used. Looking at Sky Ladder, it states that it can be used while in midair, and Xianyun leaps forward, dealing animo damage to targets along her path. During each cloud transmogrification state Xianyun enters, the Sky Ladder may be used up to 3 times, and only 1 instance of Sky Ladder damage can be dealt at any one opponent. So basically what that means in here is if you are gliding, you can't actually use the skill while you're in midair. And I'll show you kind of what it means though. As you can see, I'm spamming my skill, can't use it. What it means by using it in midair though is by the first time you use the skill, you kind of pop yourself up in the air and you can keep tapping your skill over and over again. So that's the idea. You can use it up to 3 times. You can either do it once, which will throw you into the cloud transmogrification state, and then allow you to technically use 1 instance of Sky Ladder. But Sky Ladder is once you use once of the, and you have to get into the transmogrification state. So if you're in your glide formation, technically you're not in your transmogrification state, which is why you can't actually trigger her Sky Ladders anymore in her skill. But if you've already triggered it once, you can trigger it again, and you can even hit the ground and do it again. So even if you've hit the ground, I think it has like a second or 2 before it wears off. But I do it a lot whenever I'm like going over. You can hit the ground, and then as soon as you hit the ground, just do another skill. It allows for maybe a little bit easier of the kind of distance of maybe what you're trying to do with her. So very, very helpful when you're trying to kind of like run around. I usually do it when I'm trying to grab crystal flies in Diluc's area, the winery basically. But anyways, that's basically how the skill is going to be used, and that's what this means with the Sky Ladders. You can use up to 3 times, but you can't use them while you're in midair. You have to use your skill to get into the transmogrification state, and then you can use them while you're in midair. If Xianyun does not use Drift Cloud Wave while in this state, the next cooldown of the White Clouds at Dawn will be decreased. Now, if you noticed here while I was doing that, actually, basically what that means that Dream Drift Clouds wave or damage or whatever, you're going to see here that if I use a skill, and a skill, I have an 11-second cooldown, and it's going to drop 3 seconds even lower. So I think it was 8, then it dropped down to 5. So it took 3 seconds off of that. Basically, if you don't do the plunge attack here, it's going to take that 3 seconds off. But now it's not dropping that 3 seconds at all. So it's just going to keep going lower and lower, and it's not going to get rid of that 3 seconds. I already have my skill back. So basically what that is helping you with is, once again, more exploration type things, so that by the time you're down here, you're once again dropping 3, and then you can immediately use it again pretty soon afterwards, and you're not having to wait as long. So that's the idea. But if you do that plunge right at the end, or even if you use it at the beginning, that first sky ladder, either way, as long as you've hit the skill at least one time, the second time you can do a plunge right after anyways. Now, besides that though, once again, that's really just personal damage. That's really just for a lot of exploration. A lot of people will use it for grabbing particles, especially when you're in a specific team. Now, looking at her burst though, this is where kind of the apex of her kit kind of comes together. Using her burst, she is going to bring forth a Sacred Breeze that deals AoE animo damage and heals all nearby characters based on Xianyun's attack. It will also summon the Star Wicker mechanism. Now, the Star Wicker continuously follows the active character and periodically heals all nearby party members based on Xianyun's attack. That is all party members. That is really nice, considering if you have a team, which she's probably going to be put on with Farina, then Farina's drowning everybody or draining everybody's HP, therefore Xianyun's bringing up everybody's HP, so she is a party-wide healer. Starts with 8 stacks of Adeptal Assistance. While Adeptal Assistance is active, nearby active characters in the party will have their jump height increased. When the active character completes a plunging attack, Star Worker will consume 1 stack of Adeptal Assistance and deal AoE animo damage. Basically allows you to actually do plunging attack. Also gets out personal damage for herself, which is this Star Wicker damage right here. Nothing crazy, but it does help a little bit more often. Now, she does have a pretty good amount of energy cost to go after, so still something like energy recharge is still going to be something to keep in mind when you are using her. We'll talk about that when we go into the weapons in a minute here. But before we go into weapons, let's go ahead and look at the passives. Looking at her passives, each opponent hit by Drift Cloud waves from her skill, basically that plunge, will grant all nearby party members 1 stack of Storm Pinion for 20 seconds, with a max of 4 stacks. These will cause the character's plunging attack crit rate to increase by 4, 6, 8, and 10% respectively, meaning you can hit up to 4 enemies at one time, and if you hit 4 enemies at once, you're going to give yourself, or you're going to give party members, a 10% crit rate plunging attack increase. So that just allows for characters that are going to be consistently doing it, just an extra crit rate help. So another reason to use all of your stacks of your skill to immediately do the plunge and hit as many enemies as possible is to give some extra crit rate to your other characters. Now, looking at the next passive talent, when the Star Wicker created by Stars Gather at Dusk has Adeptal Assistance stacks, nearby active characters' plunging attack shockwave damage will be increased by 200% of Xianyun's attack. The maximum damage increase that can be achieved this way is 9,000. Each plunging attack's shockwave damage instance can only apply this increased damage effect to a single opponent though, so it can't hit multiple opponents, but it does allow for an extra damage hit to one specific enemy, which is still actually kind of crazy. You're giving yourself even more damage for like actual plunge hitters. So once again, she's all about buffing characters that are doing plunge damage. She helps them actually plunge, so even if they are not jump high characters like Gaming or Xiao or even Varesa now, you also have the ability to actually help them do more damage at the same time as heal them and also give them more crit rate. Now let's go ahead and look at weapons. So already kind of seeing that she is a buffer as well as a damage dealer, and mainly a healer and buffer though at the end of the day. Now her weapon goes even further into doing that. Obviously, her personal weapon is going to be her best weapon. That's always how we go over with the weapons. 5-star characters, their weapons are 9 times out of 10 going to be their best weapon. Here, Crane's Echoing Call has an extremely high base attack with an attack percent main stat. Now, if you remember here, keep in mind that her major way of healing as well as damage is going to be all through attack, so it's even better to do so. Also, keep in mind, if we go back to that second passive, this is also based off of Xianyun's attack, so the more Xianyun attack that you have, the better increasing the plunging attack damage as well. Now, looking at the ability here, it states that after the equipped character hits an opponent with a plunging attack, all nearby party members' plunging attacks will increase their plunge attack damage by 28% for 20 seconds. Also, when nearby party members hit opponents with plunging attacks, they will restore energy, 2.5 energy to Xianyun here, or the equipping character. So you're not only giving the other characters another buff, but you're also giving yourself more energy back to yourself. So, and this can happen every 0.7 seconds, so roughly every plunge is giving you 2.5 energy. Now, if you have a character like Xiao that is doing about 10 plunges in a rotation sometimes, you can easily get yourself about 25 energy. So if you go back to the energy cost here on the burst, you're taking 25 off of that. Now, if you easily do quick math here, you're basically looking at yourself at 45 energy cost rather than at 70. So it's really just extremely helpful to help herself get more energy back. And especially once again, as you build her, you're going to be going for an extremely high amount of attack and a pretty good amount of energy recharge. Now, if she is the only energy character in the team, you're probably going to want some more energy recharge than others, but if she's not, then you're going to probably be okay with a lower amount. Now, lower amount, if you have the personal weapon, because this does help a lot with energy and, it's kind of help, I would say that probably 180 is a good way to go about things if you have her weapon and she's the only animal on the team. If you don't have her weapon and she's the only animal on the team, 200 plus is going to be the best way to get your burst back consistently for Xianyun for energy recharge. Now, also, if you have her weapon and she's not the only animal character in the team, you can easily sit easy at the 180 mark as well. You could probably try to bring it lower, but honestly, I've been sitting at the 190 and I do just fine. I get my burst back every rotation, and it's not too much either at that point as well. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're using this weapon. But there are plenty of other weapons to use. Really what you're focusing on here is really just any high base attack weapon, also with following on that idea of going for attack percent. So obviously if you are looking at her, her personal weapon is going to be her best weapon, but there are some other weapons that you can use if your team doesn't need that much energy, right? So if you don't have that much of an energy requirement, which we're talking about like a double animo team and characters probably like a Xiao team that has like Xiao, Xianyun, Farazan, and Farina, you've got two characters in there that already produce a lot of energy, those two being Farina and obviously Farazan, so those two characters creating a lot of energy. Never mind, you have three animo characters in the team. There's really not that much of a need for a lot of energy in that team. So in that type of team, even grabbing a weapon like Skyward Atlas, which is an attack percent main stat weapon at 33.1% at level 90, that could still be a very good weapon. With a 674 base attack, I still think it's a pretty good weapon. It is kind of helping like elemental damage bonus and more personal damage for Xianyun, but I still do think that the main stat is the biggest thing that kind of matters here if you're going for obviously the main stat. Now, another weapon you could use is something like Memory of Dust if you happen to have it. I think it's like an almost 50% attack percent main stat with like a 608 base attack. So I still do think that that's pretty helpful. And the more hits you do on enemies, the more attack you give, which keep in mind, she's still doing a lot of the idea with hitting enemies with that shockwave damage as well. Never mind her own personal hits with her skill. So her Star Worker's hitting things, she's doing the shockwave damage thing, and you have her own personal hits. You're probably stacking a lot anyways, and I think it's like a 5 stack max anyways, so you're getting a lot of attack through the ability on the weapon. So I still do think that Memory of Dust isn't a terrible option either. I think those are kind of your major weapons to really go after when we look at 5 stars though. If we were talking about low or like high energy requirement where she's the only animal in the team, or honestly you just want to make sure that if you don't have her weapon obviously, and you're trying to just get a lot of energy back, really no other 5-star really fits the bill as of right now in my personal opinion. Now, when we look at 4 stars for high energy requirement, kind of the Xianyun here, so if you're on like a Varesa team and you've got, no other animo characters, the next best option for you, in my opinion, is really just going to come down to Favonius Codex. Her hits are going to allow for more particle creation, helping herself and possibly other characters. Never mind the main stat of energy recharge. That combined with the main stat of like an ER main stat, Sands, it's going to be pretty easy to get yourself over the 200 ER max, which is just going to help you overall because you're really, really going to need it to make sure you're getting all of the energy back because she wants it every single time you come back in a rotation. Also, another weapon you could use is Oathsworn Eye. This is an attack percent main stat weapon. In its ability, it gives energy recharge as well. So Oathsworn Eye actually isn't terrible. I don't remember if this was an event weapon or not, but it's still a pretty good weapon. So if you do have it and you have refinements on it, extremely good. It goes from 24% energy recharge up to 48% energy recharge at R5. So after you use that skill, you're getting a really, really big boost of energy recharge no matter what. And you have the attack percent main stat, just a very good 4-star weapon to use as a backup if you don't have Favonius Codex kind of laying around. That's just my personal opinion. Or if you're kind of in the middle of like needing ER, but not like an exceptional amount of it, that wouldn't be a terrible weapon to use either. Another weapon you could use is Wine and Song. This is going to have an energy recharge main stat weapon as well. It doesn't really care, you don't really care about the ability really at all, but if you happen to use a sprint of any kind, you can get an attack increase as well in the ability, so that is kind of helpful, I guess, if you really want to. Do like a sprint maybe as you, use your sprint and then immediately go into your burst. Maybe give yourself some extra attack just for better healing or a little while for like the next 5 seconds or something like that. So that's really the only thing to really use there, but it technically can work. There are other weapons you could technically try to throw together, things like Battle of the Boundless Blue and another energy recharge weapon, Hawkshin Ring, Prototype Amber, I guess, if you really want to try to throw things together just for some extra energy of some sort in the abilities. But honestly, I think that things like Favonius Codex, Oathsworn Eye, and even Wine of Song do pretty well as backup options when you're looking at something like a high energy need in her as a character. Now, when we look at the low energy needs, I still think that Fav Codex and Oathsworn Eye do exceptionally well, no matter what and how you look at it. So I definitely think that those are pretty good options. The backup to probably that one, my third best 4-star, is probably going to be like Flowing Purity, just because of the high amount of attack percent that you can get at level 90 at 27.6%. With a 565 base attack. It's a pretty good amount of base attack with an attack percent main stat, here, so I still do think that that's pretty solid as well. You could use something else like Dodoko Tails here, just for the attack percent main stat if you have it and you want to, but the ability, once again, when you start to look at a lot of other weapons, their kind of helpfulness in their abilities kind of go out the window in the ability state, basically that refinement ability. So I really do feel like that's kind of the end of it all. Once again, same thing with Eye of Perception. It can be used, but you're really just using it for the main stat here. You're not looking at the abilities really at all. Now let's go a little bit further and talk about artifact sets. Now, really with Xianyun, the only real set that I would say to be consistently using here is going to be the 4-piece Viridescent set. Now, for some odd reason, I have his stuck back on Deepwood, so we're going to go back over here. There are plenty of other options that you can use, and the artifact recommendations are going to fully show that most people are going to be using the 4-piece Viridescent set. The main reason why is just because a lot of the times, especially with characters like Varesa, you have an older character like Ga Ming, and even characters like Hu Tao or Diluc that you kind of force into the plunge spot here, going into a lot of energy recharge, but also mainly going into the 4-piece Viridescent of swirling and getting that resistance shred is going to be the best thing that you can do here. Now, if you're solely using Xianyun on a Xiao set, or a Xiao, like a 4-piece, like only on Xiao, you're never using her anywhere else on any other character, then Song of Days Past is actually my next best option, and it looks like it is for most people as well. This is really, really good because it still does work on many other teams, and the damage buff that you can get here is pretty nice. Probably not the same amount that you're going to get on the 4-piece Viridescent Swirl. If it is a swirlable element, part of the core 4, then it's probably not going to be that crazy, but it still does give a damage buff. You're increasing your healing, and then when the equipping party member heals a party member, the yearning effect will be created. Basically, that yearning effect will have a certain duration, and while that happens, while the active character does like certain attacks, then you're going to be increasing the damage dealt by those attacks based on the healing that you've done in that time frame. So that's kind of the idea with her. So the more healing she does, the better she's going to be helping the on-field character do more damage. So that's the idea really with the 4-piece of Song of Days Past versus the 4-piece Viridescent. 4-piece Viridescent is really for if you are kind of using, kind of more a everybody build except for Xiao. And then Song of Days Past is really the actual like fits and ticks all the boxes for you. And that's kind of the idea with Viridescent is, or you're just kind of focusing on really using that to really just buff characters. Sadly, Xiao can't really make any use of this, but technically these Xiao teams you're using are most likely using Farina, so it actually technically does help at least somebody in the party, and Farina does a pretty good amount of damage, so swirling Hydro, and obviously that's the only element in the team you can swirl, it still actually allows a lot of extra damage to come out of that. On the other hand, though, if you're just kind of, focusing on just a really good set for all teams, including a Xiao team, technically Song of Days Past does have that over Viridescent. Now, when we look at main stats on the abilities here, we're going to see an ER Sands in the ER Sands. I would not go for an attack percent Sands here. Once again, ER is going to be your best friend, especially if you have an attack percent weapon, go for an ER Sands. Very low likelihood of you actually going into an an attack percent Sands here, in my personal opinion. You can see here that most people go for an attack percent Sands, but I don't believe that many people actually have her weapon. So that's also something to keep in mind. Not a lot of people are going to have her weapon, and they're going to bank solely on the amount of energy recharge they can get from their other pieces to make up for the lack of energy recharge they might have. Also, I just like to make sure that with her, I always have her energy going. I also personally have her weapon, so energy recharge makes more sense. If you have her weapon, go for an energy recharge stance. If you have an attack percent weapon of any kind, go for an energy recharge stance. Even if it's a low energy team, she still wants a very good amount of energy, so that's something that you're going to have to keep in mind. If you go for an attack percent sans here, you're really making sure that you go for probably Favonius Codex just because of its high amount of energy right here. That's really what you're going after. If you're going after this, is going to be because you have a high amount of energy in this ability, plus the ability of giving yourself extra particles in its refinement ability. Never mind, on top of that, you're banking on so much on getting a lot of energy recharge stats everywhere else in her build. You're not really focusing on anything else in the other because you can't get attack percent in these three if you go triple attack. So you have to focus on energy recharge on every single substat basically. Once again, getting to 180 is going to be your best friend, and if you don't have a personal weapon, I think that getting over 200% energy recharge is going to be the best way to make sure your Xianyun is actually getting her burst back in every single team that you're running. Here, you can see I opted for a little bit more of a crit as well as an energy and attack percent kind of vibe here. I did not go for a crit circlet, but I do think that going triple attack is the way to go. You can try an anemo damage bonus, but I don't think it's a good option just because of the amount of healing and damage that she goes off of attack. It just makes way more sense. So that's really just the best way to build her. Obviously, you can see here I did opt for a little bit of crit where I could kind of fit it. Not an amazing amount of crit, it's not going to break the bank, but also keep in mind if you are running Favonius Codex, you're probably going to be running an attack percent sans, therefore also running an attack percent goblet and a crit rate circlet. So that's just another reason why you're going to have a pretty okay ratio in terms of crit with Xianyun, just because specifically of Favonius Codex. Making sure you're proccing that ability that it has of hitting crit hits and getting those energy back as well. Getting that to a higher refinement is going to make that way easier, but, you know, you can only help so much of getting certain weapons. Really, that's just the best thing to go after here. In my personal opinion, with how she is built, I believe the mark for her attack is 3,000 if I'm mistaken. I could be, but either way, I still think that the best way to go about this is really to just make sure you're getting over 2,500 attack really with her. It's going to be a lot easier when you have her personal weapon and you have like triple attack or something like that to get over 3,000. It's extremely easy, but obviously I went for the ER Sands here, so you could easily with her personal weapon get over 3,000 by even using an ER Sands. At the same time, if you're not using her personal weapon and it's an ER weapon, you still have the triple attack going for you, and her base attack is extremely high either way when you use her. Even if I were to switch off to a different weapon, let's say like Favonius Codex, and this is level 80, you can still see that she has a pretty good amount of base attack either way. Now, switching over to base attack, I still have 2,200 attack here. Now I have an extremely high amount of energy recharge, so I'd most likely switch over to an attack percent sans and then give myself the energy recharge and its ability to then make up for the loss of energy recharge, making sure I'm trying to get over to that 200%. But since I don't have that real problem and I have her personal weapon, I'm going to go right back to it and make sure that Sucrose doesn't actually keep it. Besides that, though, let's go ahead and look at her constellations. Looking at her C1, first and foremost, actually, I do want to kind of say that I think that C0 Xianyun is the best. I really don't see any reason to go after any constellations. If anything, grab her weapon and then just make the team better. In my personal opinion, I really do like Xianyun, but there's real no need to really go after it. The C1 gives you an extra additional charge of her skill, which is really just some extra more damage. Her C2 states that after using a sky ladder from her skill, Xianyun's attack will be increased by 20% for 15 seconds, helping healing and technically damage. Additionally, the effects of the passive Town Consider will also be changed and enhanced. When the Star Wicker created by her burst has Adeptal Assistance stacks, nearby active characters' plunging attack shockwave will be increased by 400% instead of 200%, and the maximum damage increase can be achieved this way is 18,000, not 9,000. Each plunging attack shockwave damage instance can only apply increase this damage effect to one specific opponent. Same thing, and I believe the trigger time period is also 0.7 or 0.4, sorry, so I think this should stay the same as well. Yep, 0.4 seconds. So really, that's just a real big thing. Some extra damage help basically in that ability by changing it, also giving yourself more energy or more attack, sorry, in its actual ability. Looking at the C3, it increases the level of the burst by 3, and the C5 increases the level of the skill by 3. Looking at the C4, it states that after using Skyladder 1, 2, or 3 times during her skill, or one of those skill states that she uses, when a Drift Cloud wave unleashed during that instance hits an opponent, it will heal all nearby party members for 50, 80, or 150% of Xianyun's attack. So basically doing the charges of your skill, so doing the 1, 2, and then 3, and then doing a plunge at the very end. Once you do that, technically, as soon as you do that plunge, the C4 basically states you're getting some extra healing out for it, which I definitely do think is pretty helpful, especially if you're running Farina. C4 is actually pretty goated. Now, looking at the C6, it states that after Xianyun uses 1, 2, 3 of the Sky Ladders, which I just showed you, in her skill caused by that skill, the crit damage of a Drift Cloud Wave, which is that plunge that she does at the very end, created in this instance of her state, will be increased by 15, 35, and 70%. So an extra a lot of crit damage really from and for her. Within 16 seconds after using Xianyun and she has used her burst, White Clouds at Dawn will not enter its cooldown. This effect will be cancelled once she has used White Clouds Dawn at 8 times. So that's just kind of pretty helpful. You're giving yourself more damage for that plunge that you're doing, and you can kind of just spam it. So for the next 16 seconds while she's in that burst, you're not going to have a cooldown at all on that skill, meaning you can just spam your skill over and over and over and over and over again, doing the 3 skills and then plunge, and then doing the 3 skills and then plunge, and then doing just rinse and repeat. And with the big amount of crit damage here, it does allow for some extra damage. We start to tend to see that with a lot of the idea with the 5-star supports. As soon as they get to the C6, they start to kind of want to be a personal damage dealer. So technically that C6 is what that's doing. It's kind of following the normal rule that everybody else kind of gets to. Besides that, though, that's all the constellations. In my personal opinion, I definitely, like I said, think that the constellations are nice, but at the end of the day, the C0 just does fine. Now let's go ahead and talk about some teams. Honestly, this team section, I'm going to make it really quick and simple. There's only like 2 or 3 teams that I would really throw together with Xianyun. And really that third team is just going to be an amalgamation of a lot of different teams or a lot of different characters. So the first character of the team that you're going to be running is obviously the Xiao team. So what I like to do, just because of how I run things and kind of throw it together in the correct way, the way you'll see it actually in my build guide, or the actual, damage phase that I do after this, looking at the gameplay, this is the team you're going to see. It's going to be Xiao, Farazan, Xianyun, and Farina. Now, Farazan making sure that she's at C6, helping obviously Xiao here. Xianyun, obviously, Xiao already has the ability to make himself do plunge damage and get high and then do a plunge, so there's no real reason for her burst to help him do that. But her consistent healing is offsetting both Farina, draining that HP like normal, like we said before, but also Xiao's draining his own HP while he's in his burst as well, because of that Yaksha effect that he has with his mask. So Xianyun's actually making sure that he's keeping himself healed, which that's the great thing about Xianyun, is not only is she a Viridescent Swirler, not only is she a damage buffer for plunging attack and actually helps characters do a plunging attack and helps them jump high to do it, but she's also a healer at the same time. So honestly, Xianyun was legitimately built for Xiao, and it, is really, really helpful, and everybody kind of knew that when she first came out. But there are still plenty of other characters and teams that she technically can be used for and still can take the role of a Viridescent Shred as well as a healer, which we tend to see in a character like Jean, but now she just allows characters to plunge. So this is the first team, obviously, that really everybody started to really think of, with Xianyun kind of being in that place. Now, a recent character has kind of come up, meaning a lot of people are going to be talking about this with Xianyun as well, and that's going to be Varesa. Now, the team here has already kind of messed up, in my personal opinion, the best quote-unquote Varesa team, which is going to be her overload team. You already have to throw an animal character in here because we're talking about Xianyun, so we're obviously going to throw these two together. So at that point, you can start to throw in other characters in the team that really just help specifically maybe this specific character.
If not,
Now, technically this is the way to do it, if that makes any sense, to kind of maybe have this specific team. But in my personal opinion, I really, really like to go on a side tangent with my Varesa build. You probably already saw it. I actually really like to have Varesa and Yan-san together. They work exceptionally well together, and having more Natlan characters together helps them trigger their Night Soul burst mechanics also more consistently, which also helps. Now, my team setup's probably going to be looking a little bit different. I'll probably have something like this, just because I like to have my healers at the end. But also keep in mind that Xianyun unlike the Xiao team, is also able to help our main DPS in this instance, as well as Farina. And you're helping basically her by doing the swirling of the Electro. So what's pretty helpful here is Farina can still be doing off-field damage and obviously giving her buff. You have Yansan giving attack to Varesa, and Xianyun swirling as well as giving plunging attack damage increases to Varesa, which is also helping Varesa do more damage considering she likes plunging attack damage. So another plunge character really likes to get Xianyun in the team. You could easily switch out some of these characters with other characters. The Xiao team is very specific, and honestly, with Xiao, if you want him to be useful at all, you sadly have to really get that, the characters that I kind of showed you. The C6 Farazan, it's not necessary, but it's extremely helpful. Even a C0 to C5 is still good because you still, I believe, get the resistance shred of the Animo as well as the Animo damage bonus. The C6 just helps even more. Now, looking at this team, though, for instance, is going to be, obviously, Xianyun is going to be an extremely good help here because we're trying to put these two characters together. If you use anybody else that's different, even if you have, most people should probably have Yansan here, so this is going to be pretty easy to keep. If you don't have Farina for some odd reason in this team, you could easily try to use somebody else that could still be a swirler of some point, but keep in mind that Xianyun's already doing that. But if you're running Xianyun on Song of Days Past, you could find like Kazuha or something to be an Animo Viridescent swirler, or in my personal opinion, what I think is going to be even better is using somebody like Xilonen. The reason why is because you have still two characters that are swirlable elements, which is still technically helping the team do or get basically the resistance shred from her actual ability. So that's still pretty helpful. And you're not getting in the way of Xianyun swirling Electro, considering you can't swirl Geo. So I still do think that that's pretty helpful. So that's just another team idea that you can do. You have two healers here in this team, and technically Eon-san's a third. But honestly, if you somehow once again die in this team, that's just absolutely insane, and I don't even know how you did it. I'd love to know how. But that's really the idea with using Xianyun in those specific teams. But there are plenty of other technical teams, and that third team I'm now going to talk about can be moved around a lot. So obviously we had our Xiao team, then we have our Varesa team, our two characters that actually care about plunge. Everybody else is basically going to be something like this. So you're going to use probably Hu Tao, and you most likely are going to be using somebody like Farina in this instance as well. And honestly, at that point, just slap in a Bennett. Now, I know people say, oh, what about the ability on Hu Tao? Aren't you trying to make sure that Hu Tao's doing, like, the whole idea of, like, keeping her low HP? At this point, Xianyun's healing her so much, you might as well have Bennett healing as well to offset the healing stacks that you get from Farina, and make sure you're getting the max stacks from Farina. This is actually one of Hu Tao's better teams, surprisingly, considering her plunge is actually insane. Also, keep on top of that, you have the idea of her just doing an insane amount of damage anyways. So her plunge is actually pretty good, plus you're usually vaporizing with Farina, so that's also pretty helpful. Plus you have the double attack, which is increasing Hu Tao's damage anyways as well, so honestly at the end of the day here, you're already getting a lot from that. Another character besides that, though, that technically does work in a very similar fashion is going to be Diluc. Probably the exact same team, actually, now that I think about it, is basically going to be something like this. Just keeping Farina in the team and using Bennett. Now, yes, you could use other characters besides Farina. The reason why Farina is here, though, is because Farina is going to have that constant Hydro application from off-field without having to use normal attacks. And characters like Xingqiu and Yelan, when we talk about plunge teams, practically become useless considering they can't trigger their effects because no normal attacks are really happening from off or are happening from on field, allowing them to actually trigger their abilities to get Hydro application on field. So that's really something to keep in mind there. Besides that, a different team you could use as well is going to be a Navia. Now, I know this kind of makes legitimately like almost zero sense to put these two characters together, but Navia actually does some pretty good plunge damage as well. Once again, you start to see the same thing over and over again, the exact same team, which is going to be Xianyun, Farina, and Bennett. These three just work exceptionally well together when we look at this third team. Switching out Hu Tao for Diluc or Navia doesn't matter. As soon as you get a character like that in here, this is just an insanely good team because of the Farina buff. Now, if you really wanted to, you could try to slot in a different Geo character in here to maybe help out. You could use a character like Zhongli, or you could use a character like Chiori to maybe help out with just a double Geo resonance to make sure you're helping out a little bit more maybe. But, it's kind of up to you on what you really want to do there. And obviously our last team here, because we can't forget, last teammate here is going to be a character Gaming. Now, Gaming is also on the banner as well, so having these two characters together is going to be extremely fun, and honestly, I've had a lot of fun as well. Once again, we start to see the same effect again. I already talked about Navia, Hu Tao, and Diluc. Gumming works in the same fashion. Thankfully, he can kind of do his own plunge by himself, like the other characters, like Xiao and Varesa, but this team actually just works so well. The vaporizers that you can get on a Gaming as well with the Farina, plus her buff, plus the Bennett buff, plus Xianyun, it's just absolutely insane and so much fun. And yes, I know this isn't going to be endgame clearing content till Kingdom Come, but I do think that Gaming is extremely fun. And honestly, with more things in the kind of game happening, things like Imaginarium Theater, I do think that actually having these kinds of fun extra teams, even overworld teams, is kind of fun to always bring back in the game, because let's be honest, we've got characters like Malwika and Varesa that are just killing things almost nigh instantaneously. So to have characters that are maybe not as powerful and maybe teams that are a little bit more fun actually makes the overworld and possibly even some domain runs, and especially looking at the Imaginarium Theater, just a little bit more fun to look at. Besides that, though, honestly, there are plenty of other characters that you could try to make work. Characters like Arlecchino, and probably even trying to make Malwiko work with like a plunge of some sort in an interesting fashion. I'm sure at some point there's people that are going to try to do it in certain ways and try to make certain things work. It definitely can work. It's not terrible. And I'm pretty sure, honestly, with a lot of characters, you could try a lot of different things. But really, those are the better teams and the better characters that I could find and a real good idea to use with Xianyun.
Care for a dance?
Time to
Dance with me!
have fun with this gift.
Stray clouds converge! The show's only just begun.
Here!
I'm not
Here! Worthless!
Make way for the Adeptus! Scatter! Care for a dance? Seize the skies! Dance with me!
Let engraved names echo. Strike a pose.
The show's only just begun. I'm at least you're here to watch.
Skyward.
Make way for the Adeptus!
Look out below. Charge.
Care for a dance?
Stray clouds converge.
Dance with
Bring
me!
it. Let the mountain's veins boil. Start the clock.
Be a good
Quick as a
audience,
flash.
won't you?
Smash down.
The curtain
Falls. Heads up. Hey.
Make way for the...
Let engraved names echo. On my mark.
Control...
Look out below. Charge.
Well, that's everything I've got talking about Xianyun in this video. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of Xianyun. I really do like her. I think she's a great and fun character. I initially wasn't going to pull her, but I am a huge Xiao fan, and I have been since he ever released, and I've just obviously had to make his best team possible, which came with her. And honestly, I've had so much fun using her with like a character like Hu Tao, like Diluc, and Navia, as well as characters like Gaming when he first released as well. That is so much fun to use as well. Never mind using a character obviously like Xiao, and now a character like Varesa. It allows for maybe a little bit more fun teams. If Overload's being taken up, then I actually am able to use another fun team and still use Varesa at the same time. Using characters and getting extra supports is always super fun, and having a character that's a plunge helper, helps them actually plunge, a damage helping support by helping them do more plunge attack damage, and at the same time being a healer and a Viridescent shred is just so much kind of like a very niche, cool idea to just have overall. Besides that though, thank you guys once again for watching the video though, and I'll see you guys in the next one.